Hey everybody, welcome to the OK Guard Show. I'm Staff Sergeant Brian Schroeder.
And I'm Leanna Machino, and this month's topic is a very heavy topic. We're focusing on suicide awareness and prevention for Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month.
So this month we have a special guest to introduce the show, so why don't we go ahead and jump into it, and we hope you enjoy the show.
I am Major General Mike Thompson, the Adjutant General for the Oklahoma National Guard. This subject of suicide is near and dear to my heart. It's something that I think that we all working together can do something about. In the military, as in life, it's more important about what you do versus what you say. And what I'm asking you to do is really take an interest in your battle buddy. Be willing to be an ear when someone needs to visit with you. Be willing to be a part of that soldier or family member's life to help them get through this crisis. Together, I think that we can all make a difference. Thank you.
Let's start off, and we'll just go from left to right here, my left to right. Give me your name, your title, kind of where you work and what you do with the National Guard.
Okay. Captain Bill Dycus. I am a behavioral health officer with the 700 VSB IBCT in Norman.
Okay.
I'm Amber McCoy. I'm the alcohol and drug control officer, also known as the ADCO. And I manage the suicide prevention program.
Okay.
I'm Michele Burris. I'm an LPC and behavioral health specialist for the Guard. We coordinate behavioral health services for soldiers and their families.
Okay. All very important roles and things that we can offer, that the National Guard offers for soldiers as well. So why are your roles important to what we do in the National Guard? It's a very big question. I understand.
Well, so for me, I basically run the substance abuse program. I work, really close with the drug training coordinator. So obviously, we want our soldiers to be healthy and not on substances. And commonly known, suicide happens usually when they're under substances. So not only are we saving soldiers who are testing positive for THC or whatnot, but we're also looking at that point too to build a more resilient force.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Michele, what about the services that your office offers?
We do a whole lot of psychoeducation, giving information to soldiers regarding brain health, and on a constant basis try to keep it relevant within what they experience in the Guard as well as their civilian life with their brain health.
Okay. Psychoeducation, that kind of sounds like learning about a movie, Psycho.
No,
Okay.
It's about your brain and the chemicals in your brain and how they're affected by certain things we do in our life. If you have a brain, then you might be susceptible to depression and other things. So.
Sure. Okay. Sir, and then from your role with the BSB, kind of explain a little bit of what you do in the National Guard.
So behavioral health officers have a number of primary tasks that we focus on. We provide, again, psychoeducational information. We do briefings, really focused on building resiliency in the force and trying to help them maximize readiness for the soldiers that we're with. We're actually embedded at a company level, so we have companies, battalions, brigades that we are in with. They see us on a regular basis. It's really a big part of that is normalizing the presence and the importance of behavioral health as a part of overall health and well-being in our lives. We act as consultants for commanders at the company, battalion, brigade level regarding the mental health and readiness of the soldiers that we come into contact with. they will come to us if there is a concern. And while we do not provide ongoing treatment, we do crisis intervention, crisis evaluations. We can facilitate treatment that may be more urgent.
Is there one of you in every company level, or with every company in the National Guard?
No, we are kind of spread out. We have not every unit has one, but we generally try to have one assigned to every brigade, at least one. And so we're kind of spread out around the state. We have officers in, like I said, the IBCT, out in Mustang with Fires Brigade, over in Broken Arrow, and also in MedDet at 90th Troop Command.
Okay.
And we tag team. We have
Yes.
There are 3 behavioral health specialists for the state, and so during weekday hours, we are working alongside the BHOs and continuing to help the soldiers that they may have seen during drill. And so it's a collective effort with regard to behavioral health.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
excellent.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So September is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, and it's a big, heavy topic every year that comes around, but it's also a very important topic to discuss. So why is the subject of mental health important?
Well, everyone has a brain. Therefore, we're all susceptible to our chemicals being low and feeling certain emotions. And I think the more information we have about managing our emotional health, the more resilient we can be.
Sure.
And with regard to suicide prevention, I think normalizing some negative feelings that might occur based on your brain health helps people have the opportunity to reach out and not feel the stigma of being an outcast if they're having these negative feelings.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes I feel like the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz, if I only had a brain. But everybody does have a brain, like you said. And this idea of mental health is getting better in society, people actually seeing the benefits of that. But there's still a long way to go with making this a very commonplace thing. So why do you think that stigma exists? Why is it showing weakness to say that I need help with the brain that I have?
Well, wouldn't it be nice if mental health was looked at as regular fitness and losing weight? Wouldn't that be a perfect world?
Sure.
But I think what it is because you can't see it. It's just not a tangible thing that you can touch, and that makes it scary. How do you know that you're doing the right thing? It's almost like being a parent. How do you know you're doing the right thing? How do you know you're going the right direction and with the right resources? And how can you absolutely make sure that you understand where that person is coming from? I think that's a lot of the reason why it is so scary from a person from the outside trying to help is, are we getting the full aspect? Are we really truly understanding what's happening? And then putting trust into somebody to understand what you're trying to tell them of your problem is really scary. How many of us had to ask, our parents for help to pay our electric bill or our rent or, whatever it was. And that pride, that sense of pride, not only does your brain already feel like it's in a whirlwind, but now you have to swallow what little bit of pride you have left and admit that something's just not right and that you do need extra help. It's just the point of you can either continue down to the spiraling and not get the help, or you can get it and be more resilient and move on from it and continue to grow in your career. Unfortunately, those are the two options that's scary. That could be very, very scary for somebody.
I do think, though, that there is example out there regarding those who are brave enough to step up and say they need help, and now it's becoming more prevalent and they're becoming models for mental fitness and recovery. And then they're able to mentor at the unit level with other soldiers. And I think the more that we see this happen will help evolve the environment and lessen the stigma.
And another thing that is kind of crazy is that we are such a social world. Like now, we
Yes.
can't keep anything to ourselves. You walk out onto a drill floor and you're hearing about everything under the sun that's happening under somebody's roof. But as soon as it's a mental health question, it's buttoned up very, very quickly. It's a very personal issue. So if we could make it a little easier for people to want to come forward, which is why we created the Critical Behavioral Health Incident Report on GKO, and it's accessible on the personal site. So it is for family members, it is for service members, it's for their children, so that it would be easier for them to report, or a battle buddy to report for their battle buddy, or a spouse to report their other spouse, whichever it is, so they can get the proper help. But sometimes making the phone call is a lot harder than just typing it in, because we're so used to just being the keyboard warrior.
Sure.
So we made that a little bit more accessible in hopes that we can maybe figure out how to grasp the community that we have now, because it's changed, it's evolved.
That's outstanding.
So-
Yeah, we'll make access to that. We'll put a link to that in our show notes, so
Great.
that our listening or viewing audience can get access to that and see where that's at.
Sure.
That's
And
excellent.
additionally, the National Veterans Crisis Line, which is available for active duty personnel as well, that also has now a chat option that you can either go through the website or on your phone. You can actually chat with the representatives instead of making that phone call.
That's excellent, because that's kind of the hard realization for a lot of people. Once you verbalize something, then it's out there. But being able to just type, you're not actually saying, but you are putting out what's going on in your brain. And a lot of times that's easier.
Right.
You see people in chat rooms or message boards and things like that, different social media outlets. It's easier for them to type, but if they had to say those things, it may be a little different. So that's an excellent resource for people to use. One thing you said earlier, Michele, is that the people that have come forward, you consider them to be brave. They are very brave. But is a lot of the stigma from mental health, is it the fact that people are cowards and don't want to come through? Is it more the pride thing? If you're still stuck in that headspace of...
Well, I think that people judge situations by how they were handled in the past. And before we had... Brain science is relatively new. And in the past, it was a stigma to say that you might have a mental health problem in the military. And so it will take somebody stepping up and being, I say brave in that this is a new way of dealing with the problem, as opposed to how it might have been dealt with in the past, which would have been to keep it to yourself and pull up your bootstraps and deal with it. We wouldn't say that if somebody had low blood sugar, and it's the very same thing.
Yeah.
The brain is an organ. The chemicals can be imbalanced. So it should be treated like a medical condition, just like diabetes.
Sure. No, that's excellent. So what do you think will actually cause a shift in people's mindset when it comes to mental health and being mentally healthy? Losing a leg, if you're a diabetic and you lose a leg, that may be a wake-up call to you to, okay, hey, I've got to change my diet and change my habits, maybe exercise more, maybe I eat less of the bad stuff. What's it going to take for people, do you think, to in our society as a whole to accept mental health as an actual, health condition, a health problem.
Well, I wholeheartedly believe it's community. If your community isn't going to accept that there's a problem and there needs to be a resolution, where are you going to go with that?
Yeah.
So, if we positively banded together as a community, the National Guard is a community of a bigger community, but especially Oklahoma Guard, most of our citizens in the state are guardsmen. So I think community is very important, and once it's acknowledged, I think a lot more change can come about. So
No, you're exactly right. The National Guard is a big community, and not just being in the Guard, not just the soldiers, but the family members of guardsmen, but also retirees or veterans of past. And Captain Dycus, not to endorse the VA or anything along those lines, but you are a behavioral health specialist at the VA, and I'm sure you see a lot of that with retirees and veterans as well, banding together as a community.
Absolutely. And really bringing people out of isolation and into community and connection with each other is the biggest thing that we can do to combat not only the risk for suicide, but also for mental health conditions across the board. It's sometimes said that the opposite of depression is not happiness, it's connection. Mm-hmm. And so the more that we can connect people together, that we can get them integrated into meaningful, valued community, however that looks for them, whether it's being involved in volunteer work or with their family or in a interest group in terms of like a kind of hobby or something that brings them into connection with other people, or just hanging out with their fellow Guard members at other times other than a drill. Faith communities, there are just so many possibilities for people to be in connection with one another, and that is one of the things that fights these susceptibilities to mental health issues, to certainly thinking about taking one's own life. So that's really what we want to emphasize, is for people to be connected with one another. I also think that one of the biggest things that we can do is to keep talking about it. I mean, I'm sure that you ask the service members that they probably get tired of hearing about suicide prevention and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I think that keeping that as a part of the conversation, having regular briefings, having that information posted along with the information about how to get connected, because there's not a requirement that you go to your commander and let them know what's going on. But if you're getting the help that you need, then that is lowering that risk for someone else to know, for someone else to be involved in checking in, making sure you're okay. I mean, that's the idea of the battle buddy is so powerful for that reason.
Yeah.
Is that the idea that we are all looking out for each other, and that we value everyone, and that we don't want to lose anyone.
Yeah, and that's a very good point. Everybody is valuable, and you hear people say, well, in the military you're just a number, you're not an individual, you're not a person, but that is not true at all. I've been in for 12 years and I've never known to not be part of a community, whether it's my unit, whether it's my squad, or even people that aren't even in my unit. But everybody has a lot of the same shared experience in the military, and that in itself lends itself to be a community. But it is very personal, like you're saying. I feel like whether it's a church or even a coffee club, if you like comic books, you find a comic book shop and you can go share those interests with another person, and that's your community.
Sure.
So yeah, there's lots of different ways that people can take advantage of that. It's really good.
And I think like what my office is doing for the Suicide Prevention Month, what we want to push out is there'll be 3 different best practices for the month of September to go through. One of them will be a community. So what does the Guard community look like outside of drill weekend? So what we will be doing is challenging all the units to beat each other and maybe posting a picture of Twitter, like how do you help your battle buddy? What does community look like? Is it the first sergeant getting everybody together at Chili's for dinner just as individuals, not as Joes, just to get to know one another? That's so important. We see each other 36 days a year. 36. It's not a whole lot. There's a lot that goes on in between. There's highs and there's lows. There's successes and there's failures. But we only know about the failures when it gets to a certain point, and
Sure.
no one's crisis looks the same for everybody. So building that community of what does that look like outside of just drill weekend? How do you guys get together? We're so spanned out now that it is hard to build that, but the relationships need to be built regardless if it's, if you drill out in Lawton but you live in Mustang, even if it's hanging out with Mustang guardsmen, somebody, anybody, because you are part of a discourse community, which is the Guard.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that'll be our challenge to the state, is to see who has the most selfies or pictures with their battle buddies and what activities they're doing. So hopefully we'll be challenging another state to beat us out.
That's excellent.
With that. So
Yeah, that's really good.
we're definitely trying to show what our camaraderie looks like and how Oklahoma does it.
Outstanding. That's really good.
Yeah.
So let's talk real quick about suicide statistics. I know that the National Guard versus active duty versus the reserves, National Guard tends to have a little higher suicide rates than active duty. There's this initiative that went out to raise awareness that was 22 a day, and that's a pretty common thing. I think that a lot of people know where veterans or service members 22 a day commit suicide. It's a very good way to raise awareness. However, some of those statistics are a little skewed. A lot of the study that came out from the VA that was addressing these numbers were looking at Vietnam veterans, the 60-year-old age group, and that study was from 1999 to 2011. So it's a little dated, and it's a very specific group of people that will be attributed to the 22 a day. Where are those statistics today as far as suicide in the National Guard, suicide rates in the National Guard?
I don't know that answer specifically, but I do know Oklahoma alone from 2005 to 2015 went a 44.5% increase in 10-year span. So we went from 110 in 2005 to, I believe, 140 something in 2015.
That's per year.
So it's it was a
Wow.
44.5% increase in a 10-year span.
Wow. That's a lot. It's a very staggering number.
Actually, I think I lied about that. I think it's the entire Guard as a whole is a 44.5% increase.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No, that's all right with, uptake in deployments and things like
Right.
that from 2001, to present day, that you could understand why the number may go up, but at the same time, what can we do to combat that? And it sounds like there are a lot of more initiatives and a lot more programs and opportunities for people to take advantage of outreach to help them through that type of thing.
Hi, this is Staff Sergeant Brian Schroeder with the OK Guard Show. It may sound blindingly obvious, but if a person talks about killing themselves or says they have no reason to live, even if they sound like they're kidding around, do not laugh it off with them or pretend like you didn't hear them or blow off their personal issues as a sign of weakness. This is their cry for help. If you feel they need immediate help, call 911 and reduce their access to means of self-harm. If a person speaks about feeling trapped, is a burden to others, or has an unbearable pain that they can't get rid of, use this as an invitation from them to start a conversation about what's going on in their life that makes them feel that way, and just listen. Actions speak louder than words, just as behaviors in a person who may be at risk for suicide can clue you in to their intentions even when they are silent. These behaviors include becoming withdrawn from friends and family, increasing their alcohol or drug consumption, or giving away the most prized belongings without a second guess. Changes in mood, anger, shame, aggression, loss of interest, and then a sudden improvement are also displayed in people who are considering suicide. If you feel like you're wanting to end your life, please know that you have a very large community of people who want to talk to you. There's a suicide prevention hotline at 1-800-273-8255, 1-800-273-8255, or if you would prefer, you can send a text to 838-255 for the Veteran Crisis Line, or you can send a text to 1-480-360-6188 for the Department of Defense Be There community. That phone number again to text to is 1-480-360-6188. Please know you are not alone in this world. We all have to rely on each other, including you, to make it through to tomorrow.
This may be a really broad question, but why does somebody commit suicide? Why would somebody want to commit suicide?
The loss of hope.
There are some factors that do come into play, depending on where your brain health is. And we do know that some key ingredients to this would be substance use, as well as possible opiates, and loss of hope and loss of job, as well as loss of a relationship. So if you had to come up with a formula, we look at those things and do our best to try to reach out to people who we see could be possibly falling into that category.
Okay.
And I'll also add just the loss of yourself, like the sense of yourself, your autonomy. When you're under substance use or abuse, you're obviously not yourself. You're not. Your chemicals in your brain makes you an absolutely completely different person.
Sure.
Whenever you're going through a crisis or a critical time, child loss, marital loss, job loss, financial loss, you're not in your right mind. Your serotonin and your dopamine, your whole sense of self, when you look at it in that perspective, whenever you can't figure out what that is anymore, you start to lose a little bit of hope, and I think that's where the crisis really gets critical and it starts to begin.
Yeah.
So if we can start putting measures in to prevent the domino effect as a community, I think we would be a lot more successful at prevention than postvention.
Okay. So you mentioned the concept of we all have a brain. Again, I'm going to go back to that.
Okay.
So what is brain chemistry, and how does that work? If I just think I'm crazy, does that just mean that the chemicals in my brain aren't balanced, and so that's the reason why I feel the way that I do?
Do you
Or
want to
is it
speak to
just
that, Dr. Dycus, or do you want me to?
I think that we have to acknowledge that while we have made incredible progress in understanding how the brain works, how the different chemicals interact, and the sensitivity of the different parts of our brain to chemical levels and how easy it can be for those chemicals affected by all kinds of different factors. If they get thrown off a little bit, then it can dramatically change the way that the brain functions. But we have to acknowledge that the brain is still very much a mystery. It's an amazing device, an amazing organ, capable of flexibility and adaptation, but it's also fragile in some ways, and we know this when we talk about traumatic brain injury. I mean, we have this, sheath of bone around it, and protective sort of cushioning inside a little bit, but I mean, even if we knock our head against a door frame, we can, see the immediate impact of that, and even more so for more extreme concussion experiences, that can change the way that the brain functions. So I think the understanding that, and understanding that we still don't know. We still don't know why certain medications work very well for some people and for others that they don't, or the different dosage levels or frequency of dosages. This is what we do in behavioral health is still as much art as it is science, because we're still finding our way. Like I said, we know so much more than we did 20, 30 years ago, because as Michele mentioned, this is still relatively young science that we're dealing with, and that we're trying to help people as we go along.
And it also, there are some things that I think we can do in our everyday life, though, that help keep our stability up with regard to our brain chemistry. One of the things I'll always ask a soldier that I am talking to who might be in distress, when is the last time you ate food? And in most instances, I'll get yesterday. So a lot of times we're not eating like we should to give our brain what it needs to function correctly. So I always am preaching, I need you to eat something nutritious every 2.5 hours if you can, to help level out your blood sugar. And then we talk about trying to get enough sleep, because sleep deprivation mirrors depression and other mental illness conditions. And then we also talk about drinking your water and not getting dehydrated, because dehydration can also mirror some of those things. So if we take care of ourselves by doing those simple things, drinking water, eating nutritiously, and sleeping, as well as exercise, then we're going to increase our baseline significantly.
Right. That's good, because your body is a very holistic machine. Every part of it affects every other part. So if you are hungry or if you are tired, that will affect that chemistry that's going on in your brain. So it's maybe just that one instance you feel a little off, or you feel like you're going crazy, but maybe a ham sandwich can cure that. Or just eating an apple, maybe because your blood sugar is low. So that's something really good, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you are a crazy outcast from society.
Just means you have a brain.
Right. Right. That's right.
That's a good thing.
Just like everybody else.
You're not a robot.
No.
That's good. So, are there any types of people or personalities or demographics of people that are more susceptible to having those altered states of mind, or is that just, like you said, everybody has a brain, so everybody is is the same. Is female, are they more susceptible to having those shifts in chemicals, or someone who's an auto mechanic versus someone who's a doctor, or a football player versus someone who plays tennis because their head gets knocked around a little bit more? How is that impacting their brain chemistry?
Well, there's a lot of different answers to
Sure.
that to that type of question. There is data to show that for some behavioral health issues that, such as depression, mood disorders, particularly that there are some hereditary aspects of that, so that if you have that in your family, you may have a higher, say, genetic loading to develop some of those same issues. It doesn't guarantee that it's going to happen, because there's always an interaction between the biological and the environmental aspects. So if somebody is pretty well protected in their environment, they may never manifest any of the susceptibilities that they might have due to hereditary factors. On the other hand, someone could not have any hereditary factors for behavioral health, but that their experiences, and I would point out trauma as an obvious one, whether it be in childhood, and regardless of what type of trauma it is, physical, sexual, emotional, and of course with our population we also have to be the exposure to combat experiences and,
right.
and traumas that are experienced as a result of that, can heighten someone's risk for developing behavioral health issues.
Okay. So if there is a family history of depression, or even the unfortunate cases of suicide in family, what are some ways that an individual can recognize those traits in themselves, or what are some coping mechanisms that they can use to ensure that they may not go down that path that their family member did, or even if their family member is healthy or sustained through either medication or meditation or counseling or whatever it is, what are some of those coping mechanisms that somebody could take advantage of?
Well, the basic ones are the ones that Michele just mentioned, and I would emphasize sleep as probably the single most important factor. There's just more and more research coming out to show how important sleep is, and of course it's kind of a catch-22, because some of the behavioral health issues that people struggle with involve difficulty sleeping.
Or even signs of depression
Right.
would be
one of the signs of
constant
depression
sleep.
would be insomnia, trouble falling asleep, trouble staying asleep, dealing with nightmares that is disruptive to sleep. But also in our society, we do not value sleep as much, because we're go and there are certain aspects of the military that play into that as well.
Sure. Siesta would be nice.
Yeah. But I was just reading the other day that the suicide rates and ER visits go up substantially in like the 2 or 3 days following daylight savings time change.
Oh, wow.
So even just losing 1 hour of sleep, because people don't usually go to bed earlier on the day that we spring forward, and lose that hour, that increases people's susceptibility to
Wow.
issues.
That's
So,
interesting.
Yeah.
I also wanted to reiterate that community isolation is not going to help an issue at all. And if you catch yourself isolating and not wanting to be around humans or other people, then that should be a sign that I need to get out and find community. And the more that we're amongst other people, then the community can put their arms around them and help lift them up and get them help. So just not isolating is also something that someone can do actively.
So with that, not isolating and just being in the presence of other people, obviously that energy exchange is very, very positive and uplifting to other people. But what about isolating experiences? I know a lot of people, when they go through a traumatic experience or go through an instance, they don't want to share some of that with other people, which is fine, and that's a personal preference. But does that help somebody else go through what they're going through, knowing that they're not the only person that is experiencing these things? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So we talk about risk factors and we talk about protective factors. So we want to try to reduce the risk factors either for behavioral health issues or suicide, and we want to build up the protective factors, and that's what we're talking about in terms of using coping strategies and that being connected again with other people, that sense of connection and community, being a part of something is protective for people who are susceptible. The isolation part is very challenging for people because they feel different than what they imagine other people feel like. They have the sense, even though it's completely untrue, that no one else has experienced what they've experienced, and so how could they possibly understand? And so they find themselves isolated from even the people that they care about the most and get the most support from, meaning family members and close friends that they just can't understand. And that is often experienced by service members coming back from deployment because they went through this, and I think we just have to say it, very abnormal experience.
Mm-hmm.
War is an abnormal experience for us as humanity. It's unfortunately common, but it's still abnormal, meaning that it's very much outside the realm of normal human experience.
Yes.
And so while it is true that someone who hasn't been through that may not be able to fully understand what the impact of that is, it does not mean that they can't understand that that person was affected by it, and that they can't provide support, and that they can't provide that sense of connection and community and integration into those valued groups, whether they be a family or a community.
Sure.
So that's why we want to emphasize how important that is.
Yeah, because a lot of experience is an individual thing. Going through life is an individual thing, but we share those individualities as a community.
Yeah. And I just wanted to add one other thing. One of the other motivations for people who were going through these kinds of issues is that they want to protect the people that they care about from them, because they realize that something's not right with them, and that particularly for males, which make up the majority of the Guard, of the military, one of the primary ways that we're socially allowed to express our emotions is through anger and irritability. And so that comes out, it's much less acceptable for a male to show emotion through crying or upset in that way, and so it's what they've learned, so it's what happens. They feel like they don't have any control over it, and so since they can't control it, at least that's their perception, that they're going to isolate themselves to protect other people from them.
Okay.
So I think that that's something important to acknowledge as well.
Yeah, it's a very good point. It's a very good point. Because it is hard to, if you've never been in a car accident, to empathize with somebody else that has been, right? How that may affect them wanting to get back in a car and drive again.
Right.
You may see it as, well, just do it. You're protected, you got a seatbelt, you got an airbag, you'll be fine. But that person may be extremely terrified to even get in a car.
Mhm.
So, how would you recommend somebody that feels that they're in that position, they're in that headspace, that they feel like they're doing the right thing by not sharing anything because they don't want to upset their family members or their community, but the more you internalize, the more that builds up, and then it can explode into, like you were saying, anger or whatever it may be. What would you recommend to somebody that feels like they may be in that position?
Well, there's a number of options, avenues available to them. There is professional mental health care that's available. Michelle, if you wanted to speak
And
to
we
that.
have, the Guard has done really well with providing all kinds of communication. So we have a Oklahoma National Guard app now that you can pull down on your phone. And there's a crisis services button that you can click on right there, and it lists all of the helping agencies that have been put into place for the Guardsmen, and that way there's a safe place to reach out to. It's also, the crisis services button is on all the websites, and then we have that critical incident behavior report that you can just fill out right there online,
On your phone, wherever you are.
and that will then get linked directly to myself or another person on the crisis response team.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about signs and symptoms of suicide. This is something that many may be familiar with, but some people, even though you're familiar with something, it's almost regurgitation. So it's good to hear and have that, have those things, that refresher in your mind, right? So what are some signs and symptoms of somebody who may be thinking about suicide?
You go.
You go.
Okay. Isolation, we talked about that.
Isolation, of course.
And not enjoying their normal activities that you're used to seeing them engage in. And then we had the other factors, if you see them using substances to excess, as well as having issues with a relationship, the loss of a significant relationship can be an indicator, as well as loss of income. So if you see a lot of factors in someone's life experience, it might be that you reach out and say, hey, how are you? What can we do to help?
And I'm just going to piggyback off that. A few other signs are if they're giving away their prized possessions. So let's say they have a big award and they're trying to give it off to somebody, or like Sergeant Major coins or whatever, and they're trying to, and you know that's prized, and they're trying to give it away. Another big sign that we've seen a few times that nobody thinks of is when the person is just an isolated person already, that's just their normal behavior, and all of a sudden they want to go to lunch, and they want to have barbecues, and they want to, just something very outside their normal behavior. We've seen that quite a bit, where they are more to themselves, and then one day something switches, and they want to be a part of everything, and they're very communicative. Sorry, that was hard.
Yeah.
Wow, they're very, into the community and their friends, and it's just so not like them. That's another very big warning.
Okay. Okay.
Anything that's pretty much different than their everyday person.
Okay.
So,
And listening to the words that they're saying, they will often talk about that they don't see any real future for them, that they, don't really have any hope that things are going to get better, and that they're, sorry, blank
No,
out there.
you're fine.
Good. Brain gets ahead of
It's
myself.
okay. I
Everybody's
would
got
also
them.
say the purpose. You, as humans, we have to feel we're living our purpose and that there is a reason we're here in the universe and on this earth. And if you encounter someone talking about they really don't have any purpose in being here, they don't see hope, that's a key factor as well.
Yeah, loss of identity. A lot of us, I would say the majority of us, build our identities often around what we do, what value we provide to the larger good. And when that changes, if somebody gets injured and they're no longer able to work or do the type of work that they were doing before, which can also come with financial repercussions, that they're not able to earn as much income, which
Sure.
means that they're not able to provide as much for their family, that those can all have a negative impact. I would also mention people with chronic illnesses, particularly chronic pain is something that we see at the VA a lot. And that's a factor that comes into play when people talk about thinking about ending their life, is in large part just to escape that pain that is ever present for them.
Okay.
but
So, go ahead.
I will say, if you are in doubt of your battle buddy, ask and care when you ask, if that makes sense. There's nothing wrong with asking, are you thinking of suicide? I just want to put that out there.
So what's the best way to go about doing that if your battle buddy, your friend, your spouse is maybe exhibiting some of these things? It's hard for a lot of people to just go up and bluntly ask, are you thinking about killing yourself?
It is. So when I do the suicide briefs, we do them for the entire state, for every unit. I have them practice so they can start feeling what it feels like. It would behoove all of our uniforms to practice in a mirror, practice with your wife or your husband, because you don't know when you're going to have to ask that question. But it is very important that if somebody is thinking of suicide, to ask, are you thinking of suicide? It's very different when you say, are you thinking of hurting yourself? Well, in that person's head, no, they are not wanting to hurt themselves. They're wanting to be done. There's a difference. And that's very important. The verbiage is very important. So I would very much behoove soldiers to start practicing to say it, because it might save a life.
Yeah, and it would be very intimidating. Very
It
intimidating
is.
to go and approach somebody that way. How would you address somebody that feels like by asking somebody that you are then contributing or maybe pushing them over the edge or giving them ideas when maybe they didn't have the idea to begin with?
So that is a proven falsified myth. That is not the sense at all. There are two different type of care. There's indirect care and there is direct care. Not every person, if I walked up to you and said, are you thinking of suicide? And you said yes, not every person is going to know what to do right then and there. That's more of an indirect person. let me go get you the help that you need. Then there is direct care people it is in their nature to take care of it directly right then and there, and they know how to handle those situations. So there are two types of people in the world, as long as we're making sure that they're getting help for now, and we can create a safe plan for the future.
Yeah.
And instilling hope. That's what really matters.
Yeah, because maybe that's where some of that animosity, or not animosity, but anxiety comes in,
Right.
having to go ask somebody that, because what if they do say yes?
Right.
What do you do?
And that is perfectly fine to say, you know what, I'm not experienced enough. I'm glad you were honest with me. Let's get you somewhere that you need to be. And that is, that would be way more appreciated than somebody thinks. People who are suicidal, they want to tell somebody. If the studies have shown that they just want somebody to ask, because it shows that they're being cared about. I know it's a very hard question to ask, but they really want to tell you. They want that community, that relationship of feeling like they're cared about, like they are a person.
And it's a validation that they have a purpose still. So they, in some aspects, will wait to see if someone asks it, or if they even notice that they're down, as a form of validation that they do have a purpose, and that there is someone out there who can see that. So it is actually a positive thing to reach out to someone, because it does validate that they are important.
So how soon should somebody, if somebody is thinking about taking their own life, when should they go talk to somebody? When should you talk to somebody who thinks that they're going to?
I think as soon as you see something is not right, as soon as you, as the person outside looking in, I think as soon as the bulb pops off in your brain, I think it's action time. And if you're not feeling comfortable with asking them yourself, there is somebody around you that does not mind asking for you, in place for you.
Well,
So-
and I can tell you that in situations when you mentally feel overwhelmed, if it's even something that crosses your mind as, I'm just done with this, I am tired, that's an indicator to yourself, maybe I need to sit back and say, have I gotten sleep? Have I eaten? Am I dehydrated? So that's an initial trigger to yourself to say, what am I not doing correctly to give myself enough chemical in my brain to think rationally about the situation?
Sure. Okay. That's all very good. Very good. So if I do want to go seek help for myself, or I have a battle buddy who needs help themselves, in the military, everything goes through the chain of command, right? If you have an issue, everybody knows about it. And in this instance, it may be something that you don't want a whole lot of people to know. How can reporting something like this, either yourself or helping somebody else find help, how does that impact, either positively or negatively, with your chain of command?
So that's part of the reason why we created the Critical Behavior Health Incident Report. It's a very long title. Was partly so that way you don't have to go to your commander to say, hey, I'm having mental health problems. That is a personal thing. Then that stays there. We do have that. We do have the GKO and the public website. If you hit the crisis button, and it will list all of our services, from substance abuse, behavioral health, chaplains, family programs is in there as well. So there are avenues where if you want to do direct report, you can definitely get that contact information.
If
direct
someone
report.
is not in the military, if it's a spouse or a family member, can they take advantage of the same?
Yes, it's on the public website,
Okay.
so they can access that website, no problems. They can do it on their phone, download the Guard app, and that's all right there.
Outstanding. That's really good. So we talked a lot about resources and ways that people can get help. Is there any other avenue of approach that we haven't discussed that you would like to mention?
Well, one of the things that I thought of was, in our increasingly digital world, there's, pretty much anything, there's an app for that. And in fact, there are a number of apps for smartphones that people can download from their app store, regardless of which platform they're on. The VA has actually developed a number of applications that address issues ranging from PTSD to insomnia to parenting to there's so many of them. There's depression, stress reduction. I mean, there's and that's just the ones that the VA has developed for veterans and for active duty that are kind of specified for that. There's other independently developed apps. Virtual Hope Box is one of the ones that comes to mind.
Okay.
That have really been very helpful for people if they're not quite ready to go and talk to somebody, that they can get information, that they can get some guidance that will help them start that process.
One of the things I wanted to reiterate is that in my experience working behavioral health in the Guard, I am seeing the environment change. There is less stigma than there used to be. And I'm also getting to see the evolution of a soldier reach out for help, get the help that they need medically, and then go right back to their MOS. And there is no recourse. Everybody understands it's a medical condition, and they're able to continue on with their MOS and their career in the Guard. And so I am excited as a behavioral health professional to see that for themselves in this environment.
That's really great.
Yeah, most definitely, because we want to get them healthy for now so they can continue on their career without it ending abruptly early, regardless if it's being discharged for any number of reason or a suicide completion.
Yeah.
So we definitely want prevention instead of postvention. We need the people that we have. Imagine how much money the Guard, the Army spends on an E5. We don't want to lose that. We need that in our force.
Sure. Captain Dycus and McCoy, Michele Burris, thank you so much for being with us today and talking about this very, very important subject matter of suicide awareness and prevention. And thank you for doing what you do and being there for people that really, really need somebody to talk to or reach out or just to be a part of a community with. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to this month's episode of the OK Guard Show. Remember that this show airs every third Wednesday of the month.
And also be sure to follow us on Facebook. You can like our YouTube channel so you get all of the updates when we post a new episode. We also would like to hear from you and get any good show ideas that you might have. We're pushing our first year is a few months away, and we want to know how we're doing. So please be honest with us. You can leave notes on the YouTubes. You can leave notes on the Facebooks. Or just shoot us an email. All of this contact information is in the show notes. So feel free to reach out to us and let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to hear about, too.
Yeah. This show's for you. So what do you want to know? We can pull a subject matter expert in here and do a deep dive on that particular subject. So hit us up. We're here.
Yeah.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.
The OK Guard Show is produced by the Oklahoma National Guard Public Affairs Office. Any mention of products or brands does not imply endorsement. All guests on the show are volunteers in an effort to inform and educate members of the Oklahoma National Guard, their families, retirees, potential recruits, and the community.